podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Love tennis with Matchpoint Tennis Championships. It's time to take to the courts with a brand new tennis sim, delivering an authentic and dynamic tennis gameplay experience.
Welcome back to the Love Tennis podcast. It usually would be a podlet, but this is an extended edition because given the drama that took place last night, we thought we had to come on and do a lot of talking about it. Everyone else has been talking about it, why can't we? My name's James Gray, I'm from iNewspaper and iNews.co.uk. I've got Calvin Betton, our resident tennis coach, in tow, and we hope later to be joined by George Belshaw as well. There was only one place to be last night, and amazingly, it wasn't centre court. It was in fact number one court, where Stefanos, Tsitsipas and Nick Kyrgios duked it out. They had a tennis match, they had a shouting match, and then they came into press conferences and had a slagging match. It was, I don't think this is an exaggeration to say, one of the most remarkable nights of tennis and associated events that I've certainly ever been at live. I'm sure there have been more dramatic evenings, but I cannot remember them. The place to start is that Nick Kyrgios beat Stefanos Tsitsipas in 4 sets in a Wimbledon third round, which in itself is quite a momentous result. He lost the opening set in a tiebreak and then came back and won it 6-7, 6-4, 6-3, 7-6. The final tiebreak was truly mighty. Kyrgios played some brilliant tennis. The forehand was firing, the serve was clutch, and he proved what a tennis player he can be when certain things aren't happening. But unfortunately, there were lots of certain things to talk about as well, and we'll get into them just now. I think maybe the place to start for people who, it was a Saturday night, lots of people were out. I know a percentage of the podcast were out. I think we should maybe just run through exactly what happened in an effort to kind of fill people in. The first incident, look, Nick Kyrgios is always spoiling for a fight, we know this. The first incident came at 5-5, I think in the second set, when a line judge came and told on Kyrgios to Dumassoir, Damien Dumassoir, the umpire, the unenviable job. And then in the same game, Kyrgios hit a big serve, Stefanos Tsitsipas got it back, and Kyrgios was about to just put away a simple forehand, and Tsitsipas challenged the serve. As happens quite regularly, the serve was in anyway. Kyrgios hit a winner. He was winning the point, but he told Dumassoir that this is not how it's supposed to be. He says, you know what that's called? Abuse of the system. We thought that was going to be the big flashpoint. It was not. At the end of the second set, Stefanos Tsitsipas hit a ball away in anger. It hit a wall in the stadium. It rebounded. Maybe it hit someone, maybe it didn't. I haven't seen a video that suggests it did hit someone. Nick Kyrgios insists that he has. Actually, by the rules, incidentally, it's irrelevant, but that's not the hint there. He told the umpire he should be defaulted. He had a lengthy argument with Dumassoir. Over probably the next 4 sit-downs, he called for the supervisor. The supervisor came out, and as they always do, said nothing different. Nick then said, bring all the supervisors. I'm not done until we get to the bottom of this. What he was trying to get to the bottom of, I don't know. And then inevitably, that kind of got in Tsitsipas's head a bit, as a lot of things tend to do, frankly. He started trying to hit Kyrgios at almost every opportunity. There were, I think, at least 4. He certainly connected with him once. At one point, he was so focused on trying to hit Kyrgios that he missed the court and lost the point. And then when Kyrgios hit an underarm serve, he actually got there and probably could have made the return, but instead says he tried to hit Kyrgios again and missed him by so far that he hit the scoreboard and was given his second ball abuse code violation, having been coded for the one at the end of the second set, which resulted in a point penalty, and he then had his own argument with Damien Dumassoir. That was kind of the whole ins and outs of it. Calvin, let's just deal with kind of the on-court stuff. It feels like they're both in the wrong here.
In many ways, it was compelling viewing, but at the same time, it was just a bit embarrassing, to be honest. This wasn't... I've seen a few people likening it to the sort of McEnroe-Connors matches back in the day, but it wasn't that, because those guys have multiple Grand Slams between them, whereas these two haven't won anything in the big picture of things. And it was also a different kind of argument. I'll come to it later, but I've seen a few people sort of comparing how Kyrgios is to McEnroe, and it's completely different on many levels. But yeah, they were both in the wrong, except for I do think Kyrgios was right. Tsitsipas should have been defaulted. I don't think it actually hits anybody, but it definitely goes straight between two people's faces. And I can't see any sense in the logic that if he's lucky enough for it to go straight between two people's faces, it is no punishment. And if it clips one of them, it's default. That doesn't make any logic.
I think that, so. Having read the Grand Slam handbook this morning, last night in quite some detail to remind myself of it, is that everyone's like, oh, if it hits someone, that's a default, that's the rule. I mean, that's simply not the rule. The rules are quite not woolly, but they're pretty grey in that they say hitting a ball away or outside the court or inside the court in a negligent or violent or reckless way is ball abuse. And that results in a code, in the point penalty schedule. The kind of caveat to all that is that there's also an agreement that the referee and the umpire can come together and decide that an incident is so serious that a single violation of the code can result in a default. There's nothing that says if it hits someone, if it hits an umpire, it's a judgment call, right? And I don't know, the likening to Djokovic, I think, is wrong. I think it's right that we defend officials, as much as we can, because I think, for example, football, they have a refereeing crisis. No one wants to be a football referee at grassroots level because they treat them so badly. And I'm not saying that tennis is in that situation yet, but if this became the norm, that treating officials and supervisors and umpires like this, I think you might start to see people go, actually, I don't want to be a tennis umpire because actually I don't want this 17-year-old kid who thinks he's Nick Kyrgios just screaming at me all the time. Calvin, you may say that at grassroots level umpires are stricter and just wouldn't tolerate this stuff.
I don't know if that's the case, but look, in the first round, Nick Kyrgios lost the first set to Paul Jubb and absolutely leathered a ball out of the stadium, but didn't miss the stadium by that much. By his logic, he'd have been disqualified after losing the first set to Paul Jubb. It was reckless. He leathered a ball a lot harder than Tsitsipas did in the direction of the crowd. Now, he purposefully aimed it over the crowd, but I don't see how the two things are different. But it's also the way that he argues. Like in the first instance when he spoke to the umpire, he initially said, "Are you dumb?" Yeah. And then kept calling him dumb. Like, he's just an idiot.
He also kept calling him bro, which really annoyed me.
Yeah,
really well.
Bro, he's just a bum. Now, no matter what, we can come to discussing his tennis, which is good on the large scheme of things. It's not that good. I'm talking on the large scheme of things, like the person who he's compared to. Yeah, which is McEnroe. It's not remotely good. It's pretty average what he does. But in the scheme of things here, in a weakened Wimbledon draw, he's quite a good player. He might go on to the latter stages. But
I wish I had put it to him last night. I hadn't really thought of that, hitting the ball out of the stadium. But as you say, I was on court when he did that, and he smashed it. And I reckon it landed on Somerset Road, which is outside the actual site. If it had hit someone on Somerset Road, does Nick Kyrgios think he should have been defaulted? That's a question I would have liked him to answer, because he got into a big to and fro with Eleanor Crooks of the Press Association, who gave as good as she got and wanted to get an answer to her question, where her point was that players don't usually get defaulted for hitting a ball away, for ball abuse at the end of a set, which happens, let's face it, quite regularly. And does Nick think that she should? And Kyrgios decided that he wanted to know what she thought. And Eleanor said, well, no, I'm asking you. And eventually she said, well, actually, I think it should be a default. And he's like, right, well, you answered your own question. You obviously don't agree with it. And that annoyed me, because actually it was Nick Kyrgios' press conference. Like, he sits there and we ask him questions and he answers them. It's not really... people don't care what we think. Like, I like Eleanor, she's nice, but no one cares what she thinks about the default rule.
Yeah, but also, I think it needs to be said, Nick Kyrgios is pretty thick. Like, let's be straight up about it. He thinks that he's really intelligent, but there's no logic, or There's no anything to any of his arguments.
I think I think it might be unfair to call him thick. I think when the blood's up and like on court and frankly in press conference, I think you're right. I think he makes poor arguments. They're not logical. They don't stand up. And he does that kind of teenager thing of just picking a point to dig in, and he does. And last night he basically spent most of the press conference saying, "I don't understand what I've done wrong. Tell me what I've done wrong," which was pretty childish.
When he's compared to McEnroe, which is the obvious, I guess in many ways it's the obvious comparison. If you go back to McEnroe's tantrums, the word that was always used then, they were always to do with line calls. He thought he'd been robbed of points on line calls. It has to be said he was often right as well on those types of things, but that he didn't have the benefit of Hawkeye. Kyrgios never argues with line calls because we can't. There's Hawkeye now. He's got this constant obsession. He's got two obsessions whenever he's playing. One is about code violations that he gets and that other people don't get. I'm still yet to see him ever get a code violation for something he shouldn't obviously have got a code violation for. And I've still seen him on numerous occasions not get code violations when he really should. The other obsession he's got is that everyone involved in tennis is rubbish at what they do.
Yeah. From
umpires, line judges, ball kids, waiters, tournament organizers, governing bodies, other players. Everybody in tennis is crap at what they do other than him. And I don't know why he still hangs around, because he hates it. He hates everyone involved in it. I don't know why he just doesn't sod off.
It's actually a quite good point. I don't really understand why Nick Kyrgios plays tennis. He said last night, I asked him a question about, whether they'd be friends again, because he, on the court afterwards, he said, I've got the utmost respect for Stefanos. He also mentioned Petros, which I thought would make you laugh, Calvin. He says, I'm close with his brother and, I love him and I have the utmost respect for him. And I said, look, you said these things on court, and then the last 20 minutes, it feels like, because he was in press straight after Stefanos, and we'll come on to what Stefanos said later. I said, do you think you'll just brush this off and you'll be friends in 2 days? And he said, I don't care. When I'm back home and you see my everyday and who I'm competing with on the basketball court, these guys are dogs. The people I'm playing at Wimbledon, they're not. He's that soft to come in here and say I bullied him, which is what he said. We're not cut from the same cloth. I go up against guys who are true competitors. If he's affected by that today, then what's holding him back? Because he talks about Stefanos some more. I don't really understand why he's playing tennis if he's so keen on his...
He's absolutely deluded. He's not all there. Like this stuff about the people I play basketball with. What, in your pickup game? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like what? I guarantee he's right. So on that basis, right? What? I guarantee he's not going down on the streets of Philadelphia and playing basketball down there. He's playing with. The guy goes round with an entourage of yes men.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have a coach or anyone. I've seen him there at the tournament. No one in his little posse. As for anyone who's ever seen Entourage, the people in Nick Kyrgios's posse make Turtle look like a genuine, hard-working human being. Like they're just, he's got this little entourage, this harem of yes men who follow him around, and he's talking about the people I play pickup basketball with. He's not a basketball player. What's he talking about?
I think he wishes he were. Look, I mean, I was going to say I wish he were as well, but that actually gives us something to talk about. And actually that brings me on to the big question that I've written down. Is Nick Kyrgios good for tennis?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. Gets people, people talk about, although I think we think that he's more important than he is. I was out with a few people last night when the match was going on. A couple of people passed a couple of comments, but there were about 20 of us out, men and women, and no one really cares for him. Everyone just thinks he's a bit of a dick. I
think he gets eyeballs on the sport. You can't deny that. Everyone will be talking about it today, about him. He's going to play again on Monday. Everyone will be talking about that. I think for the most part, that's a good thing. But do we really want people to think that this is what tennis is? I don't know. Do people think this is what tennis is? I don't know as well. But
he's good for the game, James. He's good for the game when he plays. He doesn't play enough. He's not in the tournaments enough. He's not around enough. It's like saying, It's like having a striker at football who's very, very good, but he only plays 4 games a season. Like, can you say he's good for the team? Like,
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. He's kind of alluded to it himself. You know, someone said, how good are you? What's been holding you back? And he said, I just don't play enough at the moment to be an established top 10 player. I'd have to be going deep every week. I don't even look at the rankings. I felt like the favourite today, which I don't know if he was the favourite, but he certainly had the ability to win. I mean, let's talk about his tennis. He is now going to play Brandon Nakashima in the next round, and then either Christian Garin or Alex de Minaur. On that basis, I think he's probably a favourite to make the semi-finals and then play Rafa Nadal. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he plays his best tennis in every match. Does he beat Rafa Nadal, for example? Is his best tennis enough to beat Rafa Nadal?
it depends if Nadal's injured. If Nadal's not injured, no. Nadal's just better than him. He's not. He thinks he's better than what he is. He's not. He might not be far off if he played all the time, he'd be a top 10 player. I don't think he'd be a top 6 or 7 player.
I don't know if his body would hold up though. That's the thing, because he quit doubles this week before it started because he said he didn't think his body would cope. He pulled out in Mallorca again because he felt that he was just reaching the edge of getting injured. He has a pretty extensive injury record. That's the sort of truth of it.
But he doesn't train.
Well, yeah, I suppose that doesn't help. But you wonder if he trained, would he just be injured more? I don't know.
I mean, he's a big guy. You look at his build. Apart from his horrible posture, he's got pretty much the perfect build for the modern day tennis player.
Yeah.
In terms of height and just his size is good for tennis. There's no reason why, if he was fully committed, that his body wouldn't hold up. But his body doesn't hold up because he doesn't train. Is the serve like, when you look at the serve, do you think that's a serve that's gonna break down in terms of injury? Like, there are some serves you look at, no. His serve is world class. He has. I've said before, it's one of the top 15 serves of all time. I think it's an astonishing sight in full flow. Yeah. And he hits spots on it at will that other players can't. And that kind of covers it up. I think a lot of people would like us to think that he's great outside the serve. His forehand's quite good. He's got his backhand, he has nice feel on it. But if he didn't have the serve, if his serve was 10% worse than it is, he wouldn't be a top 150 player. I mean, you mentioned how well he hits his spots. There was a pretty amazing game last night at, I think it was 3-4, and I think it must have been the fourth set, where Kyrgios was kind of losing his head a little bit because he just failed to break Tsitsipas, and he went love 40 down, and you just felt that he was going to do something really clutch. And sure enough, he won 5 points in a row and won the game. And it was just hitting spots, and you couldn't predict the serve. Tsitsipas was guessing by the end and guessing wrong, and even when he guessed right, he couldn't get it back. And it was that little moment where I just removed myself from all the nonsense, and I was like, can you imagine what this guy would be like if we didn't have all the nonsense around him? But then I sort of counter myself and say, is it possible for him to even play like this and be a normal human being? Or is actually everything that he does is a reaction to the stress of the situation? Yeah, I get what you're saying. But I've said before, though, I think it's a cop-out. I think it's always him making an excuse. It's another difference with McEnroe. When McEnroe had his tantrums, he was obsessed with winning. He had no other thought in his mind other than winning the matches, and he thought people were preventing him from winning. He thought other people's incompetence, namely line judges and umpires, were preventing him from winning. I think Kyrgios does all this as some sort of get out should he lose. Yeah, someone said to me last night, someone texted me and said, crikey, the stomach on Kyrgios to do what he's doing on like this point or that point, to play this underarm or to hit these shots. And I actually said, well, he's not got a lot to be afraid of, because he's created this mindset for himself where, as you say, Calvin, if he loses, it's not his fault. Yeah. So actually, when you've got that and when it's really well reinforced, what is there to be afraid of? Yeah. Because if you lose, you can blame someone else and it's not your fault. And if you win, great. So actually, it's kind of genius
Like it's a bit like Djokovician in its kind of siege mentality, and I guess Djokovic doesn't make excuses in the same way Kyrgios does, but there's certainly that kind of very powerful Tom Brady-esque, everyone's against me, and I think that's a very effective mindset.
Yeah, in a way, but again, he doesn't win enough to be saying that. You need to, if you want to be entered into that sort of pantheon of people who do that, you've got to win more. He doesn't hardly win. Like, he doesn't hardly play, and he hardly ever wins. And he also goes onto the court. I don't know anyone else I've seen who actively goes onto the court and creates arguments out of nothing.
Yeah, but that's why I think he needs it. That's why I think it's just part of how he plays. And but also, what are his solutions to these things? Like we say, he hates everyone. He thinks everyone's rubbish, and he thinks we should let him do it. But he also goes around saying he doesn't care about it. So what? So we should let him run tennis, but he doesn't care about tennis. Yeah, that's brilliant. We should let him decide how the umpires work. Like what is his problem with umpires and line judges and Hawkeye and the other players? Yeah, quite. Let's talk a bit about Stefanos Tsitsipas, because there were actually two players involved in this match, although it's easy to think there was only one. I have to say, his press conference, there's moments when you just can't quite believe what you're seeing. He came in, and as is the rule now, the first question is just the moderator saying, here you go, toss one up for them, give us your thoughts on the match. He said, I enjoyed my tennis today. I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed the way I fought and tried to find solutions to be in control. A bit disappointed with some of the things that went down, especially when they're repetitive over and over again. Starts to get difficult to ignore in a way. Yeah, it felt kind of a circus in a way. And we all thought, okay, is he off the long run here, or is that as much as he's going to say? Turns out he was massively off the long run. He says he's played him a lot. He doesn't think he'd ever played a match with him where he's behaving that way. Constant talking and complaining. We're there to play tennis, not have conversations. The referee's not going to change his mind, which I thought was a good point. And then the line that kind of became the calling card for all the stories for the next 24 hours, he says, he was asked, I saw you miss-hit a backhand, and he shouted, good shot. What was your reaction? And he said, it's constant bullying, that's what he does. He bullies the opponents. He was probably a bully at school himself. I don't like bullies. I don't like people that put other people down. He's got some good traits in his character as well, but he also has a very evil side to him, which, if it's exposed, it can really do a lot of harm and bad to the people around him. When that was put to Kyrgios, he said that was soft, and if that, he said that Tsitsipas has some serious issues. He came up with a very Donald Trump-esque line about being popular in the locker room. He said, I think he's just making the match about me. He's got some serious issues. I'm good in the locker room. I've got many friends, just to let you know. I'm actually one of the most liked. I'm set. He's not liked. Let's just put that out there. I mean, he might as well have said, many people are saying that I have many friends, and the most friends, the best friends. It was so Trumpian. Do you think Stefanos Tsitsipas is being soft here, Calvin?
I don't know if soft is the word in that context. In terms of what he said after the match, they're different characters, aren't they? Stefanos, I'm not his biggest fan to the way he reacts and that, but he's kind of a bit airy-fairy, isn't he? It's kind of a bit like a hippie in that regard. And we'd had a brief discussion before about this, using this word soft. I've changed my mind on it there, having heard the full quote from you, James. I don't think what he said there is a bit soft, but I think on the court, if he was letting it affect him there, then I would say that is soft.
And I think he did. When he was just... There was a period of the match where the only thing he was trying to do was make first serves and hit Kyrgios with the ball. And actually, someone asked him, you tried to hit him several times. Why? And he said, just to stop.
I think as well, the use of the word bullying, I don't necessarily agree with that, because it's a strange one, isn't it? I don't know if Kyrgios had done all of that in order to get in Tsitsipas's head, I would be thinking that is sort of quite smart. and he's riding the line. But I don't think Kyrgios is doing that. He's just nuts.
Yeah.
And it's just a petulance on his part. And I would say that it is soft to let an opponent bring you down to that level.
Yeah.
Where you're no longer... I always say that mental toughness is playing every ball on its merit. I always say, it's actually Steve Waugh who said it, but I've just kind of nicked it. It's playing every ball on its merit. And on that basis, he's not being mentally tough, because if he's trying to hit him rather than pass him, he's not playing every ball on its merit.
Yeah, and I think that's very reasonable. And I think also, I think we forget Stefanos Tsitsipas is 23. Like, he is still pretty young. And I'm not using this as an excuse. I'm just saying he is a young guy, and some young guys don't have, he is amazingly the younger man in that matchup, which it takes a lot to think about. I think he should have known that was coming. The way Nick's behaved this week, Nick beat him a couple of weeks ago as well, as Kyrgios was at pains to point out, saying, he's probably just upset that I beat him again. I'd be angry if I lost to someone 2 weeks in a row, which Kyrgios has done multiple times, but anyway. I do think he should have seen it coming and had a plan. And, I have seen Apostolos and Mark Philippoussis having a lot of conversations this week. I know Philippoussis has been offering a lot of advice, and he was in the box last night. And I think the biggest thing and I don't know if either of them even thought about it, I think they were maybe so focused on their own game. And I heard them talking tennis, and they were very focused just on the game. I wonder if they ever even had a conversation that said, just by the way, what do we do if Kyrgios has a meltdown? Because I do think you need to plan for that, don't you? Would you not, if you were preparing a player to play Kyrgios and you know that the player maybe isn't the toughest guy mentally, would you not be like, listen, how are we going to negotiate that? I'd
be amazed if they didn't. I'd be amazed if they didn't have a conversation going, look, we know what's going to happen. He does it all the time. It's not if, James. It's not if Kyrgios has a meltdown. It's when Kyrgios has a meltdown. He has one in every game, every match he plays, unless he wins 6-2, 6-1, 6-2, and he still often has them in that circumstance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be amazed there. I think Kyrgios is kind of he's kind of got an easy run here, because there's not many mentally tough players around. To be honest, this nonsense that he does, it won't work against Nadal, won't work against Djokovic, it won't work against even we go the next one. It doesn't work against Murray. He was trying this. He was doing this sort of nonsense 2 weeks ago against Murray, and Murray just polished him off.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work against Del Potro or Stan Wawrinka.
Interesting that you mentioned Nadal, and maybe this gives us an easy segue to. We could literally spend an hour talking about Kyrgios and Tsitsipas, because it's valuable and it's interesting. But Nadal did have some drama last night. While almost everyone was watching Kyrgios Tsitsipas, Nadal was absolutely demolishing Lorenzo Sonego 6-1, 6-2, 6-4. But there was some, unhappiness at 4-all. And Rafa came to the net and had an elongated conversation with Lorenzo Sonego, who then eventually just walked off because he had lost. And Rafa said afterwards, he said, look, I have to say I was in the wrong. I should not call him to the net, so I apologise for that. My mistake, no problem, I recognise that. All the stuff during the match, I don't want to comment, because I spoke to him in the locker room, and that stays there. The only thing I can say is I saw him personally and apologised for that. Basically, he was complaining about Lorenzo Sonego's grunt, which, at the best of times is an elongated grunt. And I think Rafa felt that it was elongated too much, and that it was causing a hindrance. The umpire, of course, didn't agree and didn't call a hindrance. But Calvin, elongated grunting, people do it, don't they?
Yeah, you see it more when you're there. What cracks me up is when people do it on the practice court. I've heard many different grunts over the last couple of weeks. The worst grunt I've not seen. I can't recall Sonego's, to be fair. I haven't seen it. What astonishes me though is grunts after the ball has been hit. And you get a lot of players who do this, and it seems to me like it's there for nothing other than to piss the opponent off.
Yeah, I've sometimes heard someone claim that by grunting when you hit it, you can disguise your shot more. Because you can disguise the noise it makes off the racket.
I don't think that's got any weight to it, to be honest. I think some players, some players do grunt a lot and some don't. And it's a natural that they grunt. Like Liam Brody, like you could be playing table tennis with him, and I swear he'd get a grunt out because it's the same grunt all the time. It's just something he does it from the first ball in practice.
Yeah.
But it's a natural grunt. But you also get other players, like I say, who are doing it. It happens, I guess, a lot more in the women's game. They do it specifically. I think they do it just to wind the opponent up.
I mean, I seem to remember, Calvin, you saying a player you work with, you actually encouraged them to grunt a bit more, just to create a bit more aggression. Is that right?
Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah, but a natural one, just when they're hitting it, it just seems like, just like you say, it just feels like it's a more of an aggressive shot if you do that.
I guess there's a physiology to it, like, because when you're weightlifting and stuff, you're supposed to breathe in and then breathe out as you exert. And in boxing, people maybe don't know this, but some fighters you'll see when they throw a punch, you'll hear a noise like a tss, 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 and people think it's the noise of the gloves or the landing. It's not. It's the boxer with their mouth going tss, tss, because it forces you to exhale as you throw the punch, and it forces you to regulate your breathing in terms of exertion.
We always try and I always encourage players to breathe. The breathing is hugely important in tennis shots. You can't. Yeah,
Sorry,
just in life in general.
It's really important. I've always said that. I've always been a big fan of breathing.
That's another Trump comment from me. That
I'm the best breather. I do so much breathing. I'm so good at it. It's so
Some
important.
people say I invented breathing, but no, you can't. Look, the breath that you take as you hit the ball dictates how hard you swing at the ball. And if any listeners want to try it, you can't swing hard and breathe slowly. It's impossible, and vice versa. Like you just can't. And so what happens is when players hold their breath, often when they're nervous, they're not releasing the arm on the shot as much as they need to be.
Interesting. Do you think it's significant that Nadal, that he did get a bit wound up and then admitted afterwards that he had, he shouldn't have said anything? Like, I can't really remember him ever being like, "Yep, nope, sorry, I sort of I lost my cool there a bit, and I'm sorry about that."
I think he does a bit of that, but all those best players, and I feel like it might be a bit of double standards here because I'm giving Nadal I'm not giving Nadal any sort of pass, but you get into the competitive mindset and you say things occasionally that you shouldn't say. I think it's Roy Keane's quote that you shouldn't ever be competing in a stable, sane mindset. And
he certainly never did.
Yeah, but I think there is an element of truth about that. And with Nadal, it would be the case. You can't play like Nadal does and be thinking in a stable, normal mindset.
And I think to sort of come back on any double standards accusations, there is slack in the rope. We allow people to have a bit of give and take. Yeah. But Kyrgios just oversteps that line by quite so much that it's
it does it every time as well.
Yeah,
like every match. I will say this. I don't want to sort of spend too much time going back to Kyrgios and Tsitsipas, or Tsitsipas in particular, but he's straddled the rules quite a bit now, and I think something I don't want to give him too much of a free pass. We have a go at Kyrgios a lot. Tsitsipas is kind of getting to that territory as well, isn't he? With his toilet breaks and hitting the balls into the crowd and that kind of thing. There's certainly an element of being a bit of a spoilt child themselves within that. I mean, I actually on that I saw him in the restaurant the other day with his mum tucking his serviette into his front of his shirt for him while he was eating.
Oh no!
So, which was a bit of a. There was actually only me. It was late on one night. There was only me and him left in the restaurant, and his mum came across while he was eating and started tucking his bib in for him, which was
oh my god,
really odd.
I mean, I have heard sort of talking to people about the Tsitsipas family, and I'm often like, "Oh, Apostolos, he's a bit much, isn't he?" And quite a lot of them say, "Yeah, you've not met his mother," which maybe says something. But I don't know. I always take that stuff with a pinch of salt, but there is some maybe some truth to it. Let's move on because incredibly, Iga Swiatek lost a tennis match yesterday, and it's about the fourth biggest story of the day. Absolutely remarkable. Iga Swiatek going down to Alizé Cornet in 3 sets. 37 matches her unbeaten streak has ended at. Sorry, she didn't go down 3 sets. She very much went down straight sets, 6-4, 6-2. It says a lot about how much happened yesterday that I literally watched every ball of that match and I couldn't remember the score. Swiatek was well off her best. I think she would admit that. She said that she had never in practice or in matches felt that comfortable during this grass court swing. Alizé Cornet, of course, who shocked Serena Williams 8 years almost exactly. On the same day of Wimbledon, it was middle Saturday. She beat top seed Serena Williams on the same court as well. It was on number 1. She once again did it, beating Iga Swiatek 6-4, 6-2. She's 32 years old, Calvin. She said, in France we say a good wine ages well, and I'm like a good wine. She insisted she wouldn't be having any wine to celebrate. I mean, I know we say that women's tennis is a bit nuts at the moment, but the one thing we used to be able to rely on was that Iga Swiatek would win matches. I guess it does show that grass is a bit different and is a bit of a leveler, and that Swiatek isn't the force that she is elsewhere on grass.
I don't know if the grass was the cause of it. She's a good grass court player. I think you can lose matches. It just sometimes happens. I didn't expect it to happen to Cornet, but 37 in a row is some run, to be fair. And I bang on about the inconsistency in the women's game so much, but I think if there's one person who we can give a free pass on it, it's Swiatek. The women's draw is interesting now, though, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if interesting is the word. I mean, there's a bit of a risk that the women's draw, to come back to what you were saying about inconsistency in the women's game, there's a risk we might get Tatiana Maria against Jule Niemeyer and Elise Mertens against Caroline Garcia as the 2 bottom half quarterfinals, which, I like all of those players. I like Jule Niemeyer. She's a really interesting player. She's got an absolutely monster serve. Caroline Garcia's played very well. Caroline Garcia, by the way, is great to watch. I mean, I've said this a couple of times on Podlets. She's really good to watch. She comes forward. She serves really well. But I'll tell you who I think the draw's wide open for, Calvin. Jelena Ostapenko. And I don't think anyone can disagree that. Imagine a world where Jelena Ostapenko and Nick Kyrgios win Wimbledon and tell me that isn't at very least amusing.
I mean, do they still do the thing where they've got to dance? Because if they do, yes. I imagine those two arguing, causing a row with each other.
No, my hand goes on top. No, your hand goes. No. Look, this hand goes on. We're going back. No, we're going forward. Yeah.
Kyrgios telling everyone that no one else knows how to dance other than him. And his basketball mates are the best dancers.
Ostapenko wanted to take a break because she's got an injury. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the draw here. There's only. Halep's still left in there, who's got, 2? And Ostapenko's got 1 slam. No one else. So we're looking at another tournament with another first-time slam winner.
Yeah. Which
I don't think Halep's going to win it.
I mean, it's wide open for Ons Jabeur, isn't it? I mean, she's got Elise Mertens in the 4th round, and then she either plays Garcia or Buzkova, and then probably Jelena Ostapenko in the semi-finals. I mean,
looking at it, you'd think it's probably Badosa and Jabeur in the final.
Interesting, Badosa. I mean, she beat Petra Kvitova on centre yesterday in a pretty close match. And to be honest, Petra Kvitova didn't handle the nerves particularly well.
I saw some of that.
And she talks about it pretty openly. She's like, "Look, tennis is really hard for me. I get really nervous." And I just don't know if I believe Badosa on grass yet. I think that's my main.
No, I think that's a fair comment. I mean, it's just strange, isn't it? Hearing Petra Kvitova say she struggles with tennis, and I think she got 3 slams. 2.
2. Yeah,
one of the best players of all time. But Anisimova could make the final. I mean, there's certain players who I say I'd be shocked if they win it, but it's women's tennis. I don't think Cornet, Tomljanovic, Martic, Rybakina, Tan, Buzkova, Garcia, Mertens, Maria, Watson or Neymar are winning it.
Yeah. So who does that leave you?
It leaves with Jabeur, Anisimova, Halep, Badosa. That's it. I think it's going to be one of those 4.
Jabeur is the only one of those in the bottom half, so we think that she is probably going to make the final. Albeit, I still think Ostapenko's got a real chance when she plays her best. She's played a lot on grass this swing. She's very comfortable on grass. Her game suits it, and I appreciate that the grass here is not what it used to be, but I do think her game suits her. She's made the semi-finals here before. I think Anisimova is an interesting one. She beat Coco Gauff yesterday, 6-7, 6-2, 6-1. I mean, basically, Calvin, I think we know that this can happen. The Coco Gauff forehand just went to pieces, which is possible, right?
Yeah, Anisimova can play. You can make an argument that she's the best player left in the draw, but whether she holds it together or not is a different matter. I think she is going to win a slam at some stage. It might be now.
Someone said to me yesterday that someone who will remain nameless, that Amanda Anisimova doesn't pass the Turing test. The Turing test is a series of questions by which you differentiate robots from humans. It's
Right.
basically things that you ask artificial intelligence to see if they're capable of being a human being. And they reckon that Anisimova did not pass that test. I mean, she is, for someone who's got such an interesting story and who clearly, has a lot of emotions, she doesn't half hide them. I mean,
I've not actually heard her talk. That surprises me because she seems, as I've commented before, she certainly has quite an active social life as well.
Yeah. Well, she literally said the other day, we said, did you watch? She's playing Harmony Town in the next round. And someone said, did you watch Serena against Harmony Town? She's like, yeah, I watched it in the Dog and Fox, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is a big pub in Wimbledon Village.
Yeah.
I didn't inquire as to whether she was drinking or not. I assume she wasn't. But just like on a number of occasions, so someone said, you're going to play on the 4th of July. And Amanda said, wait, what? When's that? And he was like, it's Monday, the 4th. And she was like, oh yeah, I'll be playing then. It's pretty exciting, I guess. Maybe my friends back home will have a party and watch my match. That's pretty cool. It's just like, okay, someone asked her something different. Asked her about the Serena match. She was like, I was in the pub. Which, like most players, that's like, okay, great, a good jumping off point for a story. And she's like, nope, nothing more. Someone said, what about playing on Middle Sunday? And she said, what? What do you mean Middle Sunday? No one plays on Sunday? And they're like, no, it's the first time they've scheduled matches on Sunday this year. She's like, so normally they wouldn't play. I don't know, maybe she's just usually out of Wimbledon by then, but...
Yeah. I mean, she's IMG, and I think they just drill media training into them so much. They call it media training, but it's basically don't tell anyone anything, ever, and never say anything that might be deemed interesting ever.
Yeah.
So I'd be surprised if she's like that in person. I think. I mean, she seems like pretty popular. So
yeah. It's interesting as well. We had a conversation with someone about it last night, and Anisimova is one of the young ones, and it was in contrast to Alizé Cornet's press conference from earlier in the day when she was so... I mean, okay, she's just beaten the world number one. Like, it's obviously a big moment, but she was so effusive and so comfortable. And I guess that comes with age. She's 32. She's been playing, I think it's her 63rd Grand Slam. She's been around the block and maybe just knows herself a bit better and is able to do it.
I think I don't know about that. I think again, I come back to the Anisimova's with IMG. She's of that generation where the management get hold of them, and it's whether you're comfortable having an opinion on anything or not. And if you're comfortable having an opinion, then you're quite open to talk about things. And Cornet, as we've seen, I don't agree with everything she says, but I always find her intriguing, interesting when she speaks. She has no problem having an opinion. Yeah. Whereas I think certain people, I don't know Anisimova, but I always think with Emma Raducanu, there almost seems a desire to not have an opinion about anything.
Yeah. It's a fear of being caught out or sort of getting it wrong. Yeah,
and I think that's a generational thing. I think with social media as well. That's not to criticize the players too much. They know that whatever happens, people are going to jump on them and say things, take things out of context often.
Yeah. Will Smith said something. I mean, I don't like Will Smith these days, but he said something interesting a few years ago when he said, "God, I'm glad there wasn't social media when I was a kid. I don't think kids behave differently. You just see it all now." Which pretty much sums it up. I mean, he then, slapped a man in front of the world. So
it's funny actually that same conversation. I was out with a mate of mine last night who was saying that this is a mate who has behaved pretty badly in the past. Nothing majorly, just he's pretty obnoxious.
Not Boris Becker.
No, and he was saying that him and his wife, who was also out, had seen their 15-year-old daughter's Instagram where she was sticking a middle finger up, and he was absolutely livid about it. And me and the rest of my mates were like, "Did you see you at 15?" And he was like, "Well, I wasn't on Instagram doing it." No, because he wasn't around then.
Right, I've just seen a comment on Twitter from Daz Robertson, who I'm going to read out because I know for a fact that he won't be listening now. I was asked by Kimmy, who's a big fan, Kimberly Woodard. She said, I'm afraid to listen to tonight's podlet, although I'm sure that she will be. And Daz says, they're always so anti-Kyrgios. As soon as they mention his name, I stop listening because I know it's going to be completely biased and unbalanced. I'm just going to ignore that. I just wanted to read it out. If you think we've been biased or unbalanced, let us know at LoveTennisPod on Twitter. We're actually allowed to have an opinion. That's one of the great things about not working with the BBC, is that we're allowed to have an opinion. I'm just going to take a pause for a minute because my lovely partner, my better half, has decided this is the moment to do some hoovering, and I'm just going to point out that it's not great for sound quality.
Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hi, it's me again, but in a slightly different guise in a slightly different place. I should of course mention that if you really want to be Nick Kyrgios, and after last night, maybe you do, maybe you don't, you can always play as him on Matchpoint Tennis Championships. It's out on the 7th of July. You can pre-order it right now from Game, or you can buy it when it comes out. But, you know, if you pre-order it, you're ahead of the game. So I would recommend doing that. And you too can play as Nick Kyrgios. I've played the game quite a bit. I've actually not had much of a chance to play it this week because it's been a little bit busy, but it's a really good game. I wouldn't be doing this if I thought it wasn't. George has played it as well and really enjoyed it, so please do give Matchpoint Tennis Championships a go on Xbox, PlayStation 4 and 5. It's on Xbox Game Pass, so it's even on PC, and you can game online cross-platform as well, so you can play against your friends all over the world, no matter what console they've got. And if you DM me in the next week, when it comes out on the 7th of July, we'll have a game online, and I don't know, maybe we'll stream it or something like that if I can work out how.
Right, that's that sorted. I'm sure I'll get an earful about that. Let's have a quick look forward to today. We've got about 10 minutes left, and there's a full set of fourth round matches. As I say, it's Middle Sunday. Usually this is my day off. I usually go to the media tennis tournament, which is still happening, but they started at 8:30 this morning, and I certainly wasn't going to play tennis at 8:30.
Who's the favourite in that, James?
It's a great question. I think the Italians are quite good, although they're all quite old these days.
Oh, it's a multinational one then.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean,
Right, okay.
It is competitive.
And do the former players who are now journalists, do they get involved?
I did wonder whether, like Tim was going to play, but they don't usually. Because, I mean, that would be unfair. Because, like, I imagine Tim's in pretty good nick still, and is obviously quite good. You know, I
mean, Mats, I imagine, still hits a good ball.
Mats Verlander, yeah, quite possibly.
Johnny Mack will still be pretty good as well.
Yeah, but I think just age catches up with these guys. I think, I could take Johnny Mack deep. I'd take him into deep water. And really, deep in the fifth. Is Johnny Mack still going to have it? I don't know.
I reckon Johnny Mack cleans up everyone in that media contest comfortably. Yeah.
Anyway, there is some real tennis going on as well today. Centre court's lineup is Heather Watson against Jules Niemeyer, Yannick Sinner against Carlos Alcaraz, and Djokovic against the wildcard Tim van Richthoven. Calvin, we should talk about Heather Watson because we've not talked about her a lot. She's into the fourth round for the first time, the age of 30. She's had a decent draw, but she's also played pretty well. It's a pretty dreamy draw to face an unseeded player in the fourth round as well. I mean, talk to us a little bit about Heather. She's obviously been around British tennis for an awful long time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'll say for Heather is the British females, they famously struggle with injuries, and Heather's one who tends not to.
Yeah,
she always likes to compete. She's fit most of the time. She's had, I think it's fair to say, she's made the most of her talents.
Right.
I think, I don't think anyone would say she's underachieved. She's had issues with nerves, obviously, in the past. But, yeah, it was good to see her win the other day because I think she's had some, especially when she was, what did she go, 5-love, and then it went to 5-2.
Yeah, she served for the match and got very nervy.
And she's lost a few matches at Wimbledon before having been well on top. And, I mean, she famously had match points against Serena and lost the match too.
She's up against Jules Niemeyer, who we would expect her to beat, I'm sure, because realistically she's probably a better player. I mean, you say, just to pick you up on, you say she hasn't underachieved. She's got a career high ranking of 39. Is that not 39? Beg your pardon, 38. Is that probably about as good as it gets?
Yeah, I think so. She's got nice touch, solid shots. She's never really had any huge weapons, and it's one of those. It's strange, isn't it, in the women's game, because 38 would also win you a slam.
Quite possibly.
So you can say that she probably has been. That probably is around about where she's always fitted in, I would say.
Yeah. She's also played an awful lot of tennis this week, by the way. She played singles on every single one of the first 5 days, because her match against Tamara Korpatsch hung over from Monday to Tuesday. Her match against Wang, who's coached by Pat Cash, hung over from Wednesday to Thursday. And then she played third round on Friday. And she played doubles yesterday. So she's not had many days off, quite frankly. But we spoke to her on Friday, and she seemed to be loving life. And I don't think it worries her too much that she's playing an awful lot of tennis. Yannick Sinner against Carlos Alcaraz, Calvin. It's almost a sort of bet on derby, really, given that they're two young players you've been backing for a long time. Not two guys we'd necessarily associate with the grass a huge amount either.
No, but as I keep saying, these are barely grass courts. So it doesn't surprise me that they're both at this stage.
Who would you pick to win that at this stage?
Alcaraz, I would think. He's got more to his game.
And then he will play, potentially, Djokovic in the quarterfinal, assuming Djokovic comes through Tim van Richthoven, which, I mean, do you think he can take a set off him or more?
I think he would fancy that's, 50-50 in his mind.
But then players always do.
Yeah, but I think, I think he'd be disappointed if he only won a set. I think it could be close. You never know with how the sets go. But you made Djokovic favourite, obviously, but it'd be a good match, I would think. Just because, like I say, it's basically a hard court.
Number one court lineup today: Tatiana Maria against Yelena Ostapenko, who we've spoken about already. Cam Norrie against Tommy Paul. Elise Mertens against Ons Jabeur. I mean, I'm pretty staggered, Calvin, that there are only two Brits in action today, and the British number one man is on number one court. He's only played on centre once in 4 matches.
This tournament and this club, they're just ridiculous in their desire, their obsessiveness to let everyone know that they don't favour Brits is just getting ludicrous now.
Yeah.
Having Katie Bolter on in hindsight, probably wasn't a terrible decision. Having Katie Bolter on court 2 yesterday and not using all the wild cards and putting Norrie on number 1. I don't even know what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's just ludicrous.
I think... So the only thing I would say is I don't think Sinner or Alcaraz have played on centre at all this tournament. Obviously, Djokovic plays on centre. Although, am I not right in thinking they usually rotate Djokovic out to 1 for 1 match in the first week?
They'll usually do that, yeah.
And they haven't done that for Djokovic or Nadal this year.
Yeah.
I mean, tickets are record expensive this year on centre, and I wonder if that has played an element. If you pay for a centre court ticket, you get neither Djokovic or Nadal. Maybe you're a bit annoyed. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas previous years they had Federer and Murray and Nadal and Djokovic.
Yeah, that's why they've rotated them. You always had somebody else who you could do that with, and it doesn't really make sense if they're both playing.
Yeah,
they might as well play on centre. But I find it ludicrous that Cam's not been put on there. Yeah. British number 1, he's a top 10 player, and we're sticking him on. Court 1's hardly rubbish, but
no, that's the thing. I think to a large extent, Court 1 is basically the same, but there's a prestige thing. There's
an element as well that Court 1 tickets are not cheap. That
no.
you people on there want to see some good names. You can't just stick rubbish on there. But not that there's any rubbish left in the tournament at this stage. But
you're paying more than £100 for a Court 1 ticket today. Absolutely guaranteed. Just quickly, because the match may be over by the time people hear this podcast, but Tommy Paul, Cam Norrie, I mean, I think Tommy Paul's got a chance there.
Yeah, I think it'd be a decent match. I'd favour Cam to win, though. I think he looks pretty good. He's looking pretty good, and I think you said the other day, looking at semi-final, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see him not making a semi-final at this point.
But it's also getting to that stage where, again, we come to the Liam Brody thing again that we spoke about the other day, that what stage do you start getting a bit pissed off that there's no ranking points? Make a semi-final of a slam and you're just not getting anything from it other than the money.
Yeah. Yeah, we've barely talked about Liam Brody. I talked about him a lot yesterday, and we'll certainly maybe chat about him a bit later on. I'm hoping that he might come on the pod in a couple of weeks' time. It's certainly been mooted, so fingers crossed.
Okay.
2 more singles matches today. Marie Bouzkova out on court 2 against Caroline Garcia, and then David Goffin against Francis Tiafoe. I mean, I've got Francis Tiafoe in fantasy, Calvin. He's actually one of only 2 players I've got left. It's been absolute carnage. He's as you say, these aren't really grass courts, they're hard courts, but they are a bit grassy and they hurt less when he chucks himself around. I feel like he's come under the radar a bit, and all of a sudden he's got a very winnable 4th round match and he's into a Wimbledon quarterfinal against probably Cam Norrie. I mean, he must be sitting there thinking, I've got a massive chance here.
Yeah, he's stealth a very good grass court player, actually, even though I'd say that they're not really grass courts. But his game sort of matches up quite well to the grass. Decent serve, flat shots, which always help. Good slice, volleys quite well. He can play on the grass, and he's very much under the radar. I think that might be a tough match for Cam against Tiafoe.
And I think it's interesting the sort of gradient he's been on, because he's done this with the clay. He was like, right, I'm going to play a proper swing, and he played Queens and he played Eastbourne, and the problem is he lost in the first round of both. But he had pretty horrific draws. He had Stan Wawrinka in the first round of Queens and lost 2 out of 3 tie breaks. And then he had Alexander Bublik in the first round of Eastbourne. And funnily enough, he beat Bublik in the 3rd round here. So he's turned that matchup around a bit. He is serving very well. I was looking at serving stats the other day, and he's pretty high up there in terms of effectiveness on serve. So yeah, interesting to see if he makes it through and how he might match up with Cam. I think that's all we've got time for today. It felt like one of those days when we could talk for hours and hours. George Belshaw hasn't appeared, so we await with interest to hear the story of where he's been. And as always, please do leave us a rating, a review, and most importantly, come back tomorrow.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Love tennis with Matchpoint Tennis Championships, spinning your way the 7th of July. Time to put your tennis skills to the test in the brand new Tennis Simulator title. Pre-order now from Game.